Welcome to Nomadic Diaries, the Belonging series. It's my privilege to introduce you to Stephen Toole. Stephen is a career educator who has been teaching throughout the world now for over 20 years. He's taught in Australia, USA, China, Germany, India, the Netherlands. He's now back in China in a new role as a social emotional counselor for grades 9 through 12. And Stephen completed a research project through Flinders University in Australia on the social and emotional needs of third culture kids and the impact of transition. He's married to an ATCK and they have 3 children who are growing up among worlds. In other words, Stephen is in the trenches. Thank you for being here, Stephen.
Thank you for welcoming me.
I consider you one of the global warriors out there on the stage of the planet. I'd also like to introduce my co-host in the Belonging Project, and that is Megan Norton-Newbanks. Welcome, Megan. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Doreen, and so great to see you, Stephen, and to have you on our series.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
We're really thrilled to have you. And before we got in the recording, Megan and I were just saying how we would have loved to have somebody like you in our lives as young people growing up or, moving and living overseas, because there's such a great need for your presence and what you could do for the world. So I just want to acknowledge the professionalism and the education and the commitment to making the world a happier place. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. It is important work and it is something that, we do need to acknowledge, and we work with the kids to understand who they are as people. And so, yeah, I do believe that it's good work and needed work.
Yes, definitely. So let's just dive right in. What are the most common belonging challenges that you see when TCKs are transitioning to a new location and into a new school and into a new system?
I think one of the biggest things that we see is maybe a dynamic shift now a little bit in international education as well. And what we're seeing is there's more local kids coming to international schools as well as international children.
Yes.
So there's 2 different dynamics that are happening there. I think, you have local children who are coming into an international setting and trying to assimilate, fit in, belong in a curriculum or in a system that may be based on a lot of Western values. This is maybe talking from the China context when I say Western values versus maybe the Eastern value of education. So that can create challenges with belonging. It can also create challenges for belonging for the international kids if there is a large number of national children in the setting, because then language can become a little bit of a barrier as a dominant group might sort of take over that language, which proposes a challenge, I guess, for the international kids. And also in a small international school, although I would consider where I am now more of a medium-sized one, you might be the only child from where you come from as well, if, put that in inverted commas, of course, but that might be then make it difficult for you to connect with others if you're the only French kid or the only German kid or the Japanese kid or whatever the case may be. So that can pose some challenges as well in terms of helping kids feel like a sense of belonging. But there are ways that we can help that, and obviously, I guess that'll come along as we continue to talk. But yes, there are ways that we can work with the kids to help them feel a sense of belonging.
Excellent.
Stephen, I went to international schools my entire upbringing. I think you knew that. And so what you're talking about really reminds me about some of my lived experiences and in the different countries I lived in. And I think something that I've heard in international schools is there more, space for like language 1 to show up in the classroom. And I think that's really important especially if the student is going back to a passport country where they need that academic language. And would you say that that's an example of how international schools are embracing more inclusivity for belonging?
Yes, I agree. I think, Danel's work that we're all probably familiar with has really highlighted the the concerns that many international kids expressed to her, particularly children who don't speak English as their first language, as many of the international schools, do use English as the medium of instruction.
Yeah.
So it is something that is being addressed now more explicitly in terms of allowing kids to feel more secure in their educational journey in an environment where their first language is not used as the language of instruction. So yes, what you're talking about is translanguaging is the word that we're using now, and children are sort of given more latitude, depending on the school, of course, but more latitude in using their home language to do work within the classroom to make a connection with the content that's being taught in their home language. Still, a majority of the teachers are English speakers, so, they have to finish their work in English so that they can be assessed in that way. But yeah, it's being more open. I worked when I first started international school education. The school had a policy of you only speak English, and it came from a place of trying to help them learn English, but I also felt like the punishment side of it was not positive for children, and being punished for speaking their home language, in the hallways or in the classroom was not ideal, obviously, for their sense of belonging and self-efficacy when it comes to education. So it was a policy that I didn't really enforce in my space, behind my closed doors. Particularly for kids who were very new, or all kids, sorry, that's not true. I didn't punish anybody for speaking their home language, but especially for children who had come out of their home country for the first time and English was still extremely new. That's very harsh, I felt. So no, I'm glad that there is a shift now in, a tier one sort of global education, where the bigger schools are acknowledging that this is something that we need to do to help children feel comfortable, confident in their learning. So yeah, it's a good shift moving forward. Yes.
Excellent. So can you walk us through a little bit about your approach when a new kid arrives at your school, and if they're struggling with a transition? I mean, do you talk to them about the previous place that you were, or is it always about the reorientation to their new surroundings?
That's a really good question, because I'm about to start those conversations. I usually give the new children, a month to 5-6 weeks to sort of settle and get their feet, and feel like the lay of the land. And so I'm about to start those conversations with the new children that have arrived in 9 to 12, actually 9 to 11. We don't have any 12th graders there. You don't change in grade 11. Have those conversations with them and just sort of see how those first weeks have gone for them. I definitely feel like it's important to acknowledge where they've come from, get that experience. I spoke to a girl yesterday in a different context, but she's a new student, and she was telling me about her past school, and I was like, that sounds really good. That sounds really awesome. They're the sort of things we want to do at our school. So I think you're going to be a great contributor to the group that I'm trying to start. So giving them that chance to be able to share their experiences makes their experience, I guess, feel validated. But also, again, in that particular conversation, in that context that I'm speaking about, she can now bring that to her new school as well and make her feel confident
Yeah.
and comfortable, and feel like that she's already a part of our community, which is something obviously that we want to embrace as well.
Yeah. I remember when we were leaving Saudi, we had a couple of kids in our school, and they had fabulous names, and they were from Africa. And their perspective, when we talked to these kids, their perspective of coming from a mud hut, and their dad had studied by candlelight and then later electricity. and then online in order to get a job with Aramco. And they were put in this compound with these very, what we considered average houses, but they considered them a palace. And boy, how much I learned. I remember that striking feeling of how much I was learning from that student.
No, absolutely. I think, listening to them and allowing them to speak about their experiences and
Yeah.
where they've come from is just as important as helping
Yes.
them, move forward in their new school and um, getting an understanding of how they're feeling and the activities that they're getting involved in. I think that's really, really important. And trying to create opportunities where there might be something, where there might be a gap for them to also feel a sense of belonging. I think that's, something that is really important. And something that I learned when I did my research about transition, is what programs, extracurricular programs, do schools offer to allow kids to feel comfortable, and making sure where possible. I know there can be sometimes economic constraints or even staff personnel constraints in how many activities you can offer, but where possible, offer that breadth of activities, sporting activities and non-sporting activities, like robotics or music or drama. Having as many opportunities for kids to find their community within the school is also really important,
Mm.
and to allow them to explore different opportunities and try different things. And the more you can offer the children, you hope the better it will be for them in terms of their sense of belonging. And I said, those conversations are also about not just being stuck in your own grade level as well, that it gives you a chance to meet like-minded students in other grade levels because they're interested in, choir, or they're interested in band, or they want to be in the production. And the theater kids, for example, are all together, multi-age. It's a great opportunity for them to feel that sense of belonging. Yeah.
Megan?
Yeah, I love that you're bringing up like peer-to-peer mentoring. You're asking students how have they processed their story, and what is their story that they're bringing into the new educational setting, but also social setting. And I'm curious, what role does so we've talked about peers, but also what role perhaps do teachers play, parents play, the staff play? There's so many stakeholders that new students are interacting with. And can you unpack that a little bit about what are those dynamics?
So yeah, I think, going maybe starting with the parents, their sense of belonging in the school is also just as important as it is for the children. So, you're looking at organizations within the school like the PTA, for example, who organize morning coffees for the parents. And at those events, they invite different, stakeholders or different people from the school to come in and explain their role and who they are and what they do and how they help children. We've also started at our school a parent ed series. So again, different stakeholders are involved in delivering certain content to parents. One thing I did while I was at the International School of The Hague was I did a 3-parent series on just third culture kids and grief and loss within the third culture community, how to help children transition in and out of school. So, running those sort of events and having parent participation is a great way to give them a chance to feel like they belong. And even just so, for example, today, Jessica is going on a walk with one of the mums who's a local mum, Chinese mum. And she's taking the parents downtown to the downtown Nanjing, to a part of the city that was under imperial control, et cetera, et cetera. So, creating opportunities like that as well gives the new parents a chance to go on that walk and meet other parents, et cetera. So, fostering those sort of opportunities. And although that's an outside of school thing, it's still our community that's involved in it. It's a great opportunity. In terms of students and their sense of belonging and what we can do as teachers. I think one thing that we can do is, one thing we do here quite well, and we did at American School of Bombay as well, very, very good program, strong program, was advisory, a time when it's non-academic, children come together within their grade level, but they're in a smaller group of children, and there's maybe one or two teachers working with that group, so that teachers get to know a small group of kids really, really well. And so this is really helpful for us if there is maybe a child who's falling in the cracks a little bit and maybe is struggling. And, you know, when you're looking at the bigger picture, it might be hard to find that child or see that child, but they have got a closer connection. Their advisor, their homeroom teacher has a closer connection to them, and they can then bring that issue to us as counselors or as, you know, the team of administrators who are working above that level.
Yes. Yeah.
And we can then, you know, get that information and reach out to the child and bring them in and have conversations and get maybe a deeper understanding of what's going on. And, you know, that's where conversations might come up about, you know, transition hasn't been good. Maybe our shipping didn't turn up on time and I'm still sleeping on the floor, and, you know, things like that can happen that, you know, impacts, you know, their mental health and their well-being. And so that's just really good information. So that's another great way that we can, you know, help children with their transition in and out of schools. You know, just talking about what we talked about before we came on air is just, you know, doing lessons and activities in classes around their understanding of who they are and their place in the world and what that might mean, you know, for them going forward. I think that's also really important. So that's one of the things that I'm doing with particularly grade 9. I'm also going to try and do some work with the grade 12s, you know, with their transition out of school and into university next year. As we know, the CIS is doing a lot of work around that at the moment. So, yeah, I think that really helps children, you know, feel like they're cared for and that people are watching them and looking after them.
And it's such a wonderful example of, you know, the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. You know, in this case, it takes a community, it takes a school, and having all the pieces of the puzzle working together just seems like it sort of offers a safety net to those kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, again, I was just thinking while you were saying that, you know, the community is really important, and they do some really great events for the children throughout the school year as well. Like this weekend, we have the Welcome Barbecue, which is, you know, at a nice hotel, and the community is all invited to come and just meet each other and feel welcome. And of course, at the end of October, we will have the Autumn Festival. So that's sort of, you know, American tradition in terms of Halloween, because that's kind of the time that it's held. We have, just before we go on winter break, we have like a Christmas concert, and you know, I'm dressed up as Santa Claus and stuff like that. So, you know, it's really fun, and those are the sort of community events that help children, and we have children feel a sense of belonging, but also, again, families, the whole group, not just the children. Mums and dads are getting involved in those activities, community activities as well. There's a charity that our school, you know, sponsors, and then again, the India context, we had a big community service responsibility, CSR activities that not only for the children to do, but also for parents. Parents could get involved, particularly for parents, the trailing spouse. And in our case, in India, for example, it wasn't just the mum who was the trailing spouse. In some cases, it's actually dad.
Yes.
But having opportunities for them to also engage in the local Mumbai community and use their skill sets to help with charity work, etc., really help their sense of belonging and feeling a part of the community. And the school was very central in creating those opportunities and sharing those opportunities with the parents. So, you know, there's lots of things that we can do to make people more comfortable, and again, like they feel like they belong.
Yeah. Go ahead, Megan.
Oh, I mean, Stephen, you're just giving me all like a huge thing of nostalgia. Like I feel very nostalgic for the international schools. Yes. and the international days and things like that, where yeah, now into adulthood, I'm like, why don't we have this?
Yes, why isn't this happening in real life?
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about, I would go to the different booths that were, like country represented and have foods from places that I had grown up, like 6 years previously and things like that, 3 years.
I
It
think
was so cool.
one of the great things about Frankfurt International School, a connection that you and I both have, you as a student, me as a staff member at the time, um, is Applefest. I always found that to be such a great event because it really highlighted, I think, German culture very well. Um, and it was just such a nice community event and a school that size too. I'm thinking that they did a very nice job, I thought, during my time there anyway, as a teacher, like I said, is did a very nice job of building community. The other thing, and I talk a lot about this about FIS, is every Friday afternoon, whether it was middle school or high school, we were hosting some sort of a sporting event, and the Booster Club always had that barbecue going with hot dogs and hamburgers that you could buy, and people would come and just watch the kids, even if that wasn't necessarily their child who was playing that afternoon. They would still come and be a part of the community and support the kids in the sporting events. It was such a great thing. And their International Day, of course, all schools have an International Day. When we were in India, they had Incredible India as well. So a celebration of Indian culture. And so, awesome events that bring the community together, and makes us feel like, yeah, we belong and it's a part of who we are.
And it's so good for the parents' mental health.
Absolutely.
We talk a lot about, children or young people and mental health situations, but when you can weave all those different interests and the place and the food and all of these different cultural characteristics together with your children and your children's teachers, I found that to be a very, very healing experience in my overseas lifestyles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing's ever perfect either, and you just got to
No,
keep going out and asking questions. And how can we, continue to make people feel welcome and safe in an environment? Another thing that's really good, I think, in terms of local culture is, the trip weeks that happen in international schools where the kids go off into various parts. So we're about to do that in about a month's time. The kids will go off into various parts of China and go and explore and see things and immerse themselves in the culture a little bit more. And it's such a great way for them to learn and have an appreciation for their host country as well. I think that's really important. I know that can present challenges, don't get me wrong, but I think it is important that we do that. And that just helps the children who are here to appreciate, where they are and the history of where they for some of them, but where they're visiting. But for others, again, like I said earlier in the talk, we are seeing a lot more host country kids. So it's maybe gives them a chance to go and see a part of their country that they may not necessarily see, which is also a cultural experience, particularly if we take them out into rural areas like we do here in China.
sure,
So, it's a different
sure.
culture out there. Yeah.
Completely different. So it's a real intercultural experience for the native from that culture.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We 2 years ago when I first arrived, we took the children to tea plantations and we were up in the villages, where they have the tea, and saw how they worked and how they lived. But what was really great about that experience is we saw how that community helped each other as well. So people
Mhm.
who were older people in the community who might be sick, every day everybody stopped at lunchtime, and the younger and the healthier people in the community would go and deliver food to the older people in the community, and it was just a really nice thing to actually witness, and for the kids to see that, what community looks like in a small rural village, basically is where we were. We're up in the hills. Yeah. It
That's
was really
fabulous. That's
Mhm.
fabulous.
very,
Mhm.
very powerful experience.
Mhm.
Well, you've given us some really concrete examples of living interculturally, building community, um, keeping taking care of each other in the system of belonging. And I would just love to know, what sort of advice do you find yourself giving to parents over and over and over? I think there's certain things that hit us and land well. And what are the things that you tell and find yourself telling international parents consistently, no matter where you live?
And transition is difficult, and it's okay to cry. Um, you're not going to get it right the first time, and that's also okay. I think that's a lot of my message with parents, and particularly also with me working with teenagers. They're already going through, hormonal changes, so emotionality is quite up and down, and they can, just have difficulty, whether they've moved or not moved. And I think that
Sure.
just adds an extra layer of complexity to their lives as adolescents moving. Um, I also I also really give advice around letting your child be, and also be comfortable, as uncomfortable as it might be, with that discomfort. With our own children, allowing them to cry and be upset and be frustrated and not try to dismiss their feelings, is really, really important, I think, for parents to know and understand. I said this the other day in a classroom setting. I don't have a magic wand to make it better. That's just not possible. And I think that's what we as parents maybe want to try and do, is wave the magic wand and everything will be okay. But that's not the case. Even our own children, they struggle. And some days grief is that funny thing. It comes at a strange time. You think everything's okay, and then all of a sudden something triggered and it's not okay, and they're upset. And, even, yesterday or the day before, in our own house, we had the conversation about, I don't want to be here. I want to go somewhere else. I was happy when we were here. And it's like, yeah, I know. I hear that. What happened today? It's those sort of conversations that we try to have. And when the emotion comes back down, they can see the benefits of being here in the community. So it's not trying to get frustrated with that. It's just trying to sit and hold it and be as patient as you can. They're the sort of messages that I give parents a lot, and just to be okay with sadness and the difficulty with transition. But the other advice I would also give to parents, particularly if their child is feeling like they don't belong at the school and they're having difficulty with that, be very open with somebody like me, a counselor, the homeroom teacher, somebody that their child might feel closely connected to. And the more we get that information about what's going on at home, the more we can also reach out to the child and help them and get them to start processing what they're feeling. Because sometimes, again, as parents, we bear the brunt of, anger and tears and frustration, and, talking to somebody who's a little bit more neutral in the situation, might be a way for them to start expressing themselves in a more positive way, rather than, a negative way of crying and yelling and screaming at mum and dad at home.
Mm. Those are fabulous. We will, of course, have show notes, and you really dropped a lot of golden nuggets right here. And I think sometimes I wish I could go back and relive our international school experience. When I hear you talk, I go, "Oh, you've really brought it, like Megan said, a great sense of nostalgia back, and but also a great sense of hope for the changes that are happening in the schools and in the world, and really helping our global citizens and global young people to cope and connect and learn to love life. That's the bottom line,
Yeah,
right?
and I think, really, we do need to have a big shout out to Doug Otter and the people at SPAN for really raising this issue to the
Yes.
level that it is a part of this international schools accreditation process now, that we have these systems in place, and how are we supporting children, particularly with the focus on transition, not necessarily on a focus on belonging, but how are we actually supporting children?
Mm.
in their transitions, which I guess speaks to belonging in another sense. But, yeah, it's really, really, credit to him and his team of people who are now part of CIS, etc., that have made international schools think more closely about how we're working with children. And of course, also Danelle with her book that also really, highlighted some of the inequalities and inequities that existed and how children felt about that. Has really helped and highlighted and illuminated some of the things that were going on, and made us very reflective, I think, as practitioners now about how we're supporting children.
Yeah. I can see from, and I can hear from what you're telling us the difference between when I was out there, even in the last 10 years. It's just tremendous. And
Yes, it really has
congratulations.
been in the last 10 years. It really has been in the last 10 years, because this is now my 20th year, I think, in actual international education. So thinking about what I knew 20 years ago versus what I know now, and again, what some of those expectations are of us going through an accreditation process with an organization like the Council of International Schools. Yeah, it's changed dramatically, and it's a great change. Like, obviously, don't get me wrong, it's perfect. It's the way forward. It's what we should be doing. So yeah, it's great that those people that we've mentioned have, really done so much work and so much good for international education.
I hope that this offers comfort and support to all the parents who will listen to this conversation. Megan, do you have any other questions?
Well, I couldn't agree more. And Stephen, you are a wealth of wisdom and understanding of empathy, and what a gift and a blessing you are to your community. And I just wonder, how do you care for your well-being? And when you're caring a lot and hearing a lot and offering a lot, what's something in this season that you are practicing self-care?
That's a really great question. I probably am not as good at it myself as I ask other people to be, but um, one thing that I really do enjoy, and it's only a small thing, but it's a nice thing that I have with my daughter at the moment. She is reading, or not she, me, I'm reading to her the Harry Potter series. And so it's just a nice time that we have each night together, where she lies on our bed with me and I read to her. And yeah, just having that time, I think, is something that I really cherish as a family. The other thing that we have, or other thing, maybe that's not the right word, but we have two dogs at home. So one thing I enjoy doing when I get home is taking them out for a walk, and just being by myself gives me 30 minutes or so just to sort of clear my head and just take them out around the compound in which we live. So that's a really nice way of just sort of ending the day. Self-care, I think, is also the colleagues that I work with. I'm very, very fortunate to work with 3 other people in social emotional counselling. We also have a 5th counsellor who's the college and career counsellor. But the 4 people who I work with in terms of our social emotional counselling across the school, I find a lot of comfort in them. They really help me because they're experienced counsellors, where I'm sort of new to the job. So although I've been in education for a long time, the counselling part is new for me. So being able to go to them and just talk to them and be open with them, and for them to be open back with me, I think that really helps, my mental health, knowing some of the challenges that we do face on a daily basis with, different issues that we work with. So that helps a lot. And just building those connections with those colleagues is really important for me.
Is it okay to ask if one of the listeners is hearing you on this podcast today, if it would be appropriate or possible for for them to find you or connect with you for maybe resources?
Yeah, absolutely. People do reach out to me, actually. Some when I
Okay.
give stuff, people have found me on LinkedIn, and they ask for book recommendations, or I'm having this is happening at my school. Yeah, so absolutely, it's not a problem at all. If people want to start a conversation, I'm happy to talk. I mean, I don't necessarily consider myself an expert in any way, shape, or form. I've got to be open to learning from other people as well, in other situations. So that's really what it's about. It's about connection and sharing, resources and knowledge and ideas and brainstorming and ideating. It's all the stuff that we do. So yeah, absolutely. I have helped people in the past who've reached out to me and asked what's a good resource for this. So I've got most of the books, I think, that exist out there.
I'm sure.
for
Well,
that
thank
project.
you. We will make sure that we put your information, your linked on LinkedIn and your show and the show notes. We'll make a comment in there as well. And we just really want to thank you for doing the work and being such a source of inspiration for those of us who've walked this path, but such a source of information and inspiration for parents and kids and people in the global and international communities, whether they're nomads, TCKs, or expats. Thank you for holding the global heart in good hands. Feels to me like it's in good hands when it's in your hands.
Thank you. That's very kind. Yeah, I think it's really, again, just to finish up, for me, important work. I believe in it. I know it's not necessarily sometimes given the priority in terms of how schools are structured, but I definitely try and make it a priority as best as I can, and highlight these issues so that our teaching faculty are aware and we can create spaces that are safe and healthy for children as they move between international schools.
Thank you. Megan, would you like to sign us off?
Yeah, Stephen, I appreciate your sharing and also for the listeners, Stephen has a really wonderful office, very inviting, and he gave us a tour of it. So what a pleasure to see your working space as well as also.
Yes, absolutely. I've worked not relatively hard, but I've tried to create a space where at least kids feel it's a safe place for them to come, and it's open for them. It's how I share it with them. It's not my space, it's your space. Please come and use it how you need it when you're having not such a great day. It's okay. It's just come in. If you want to talk to me, you can, and if you don't want to talk to me, that's also okay. You can just come and sit and put your music on and just chill for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you need. That's their space. It's not mine.
That's wonderful. And I'd like to close the podcast with is there a certain cheer, or there's the lion mascot, but should we just say go Lions?
Go Lions.
Okay, go Lions. Go Lions. Thank you so much. And this is from Nomadic Diaries with Megan Norton-Newbanks, Stephen Toole, who is in Nanjing, China. I'm Doreen. I'm in Mexico. Megan is sitting in the US right now. And I like to say, sayonara, ma and hasta luego. How do you say goodbye in Chinese, Stephen?
There's all sorts of, well, not all sorts, I guess it's taijian, but I also say au revoir. I also say tschüss. I also say namaste, and goodbye.
Thank you. Megan?
Well, you took some of mine, Stephen, but I'll say auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, and shalom.
Thank you, everybody.